Thank you for whoever did that.
Stop that. Right, this next option, particularly obviously I work in a PMO environment and in a very changing environment. And one of the things I actually proactively looked for on this agenda was this true value of a PMO. I had another speaker lined up for that.
Yeah, I'm second choice.
And then I talked about LinkedIn earlier, and what I done is I got in touch with a girl, Lindsay Scott, who I've been years ago doing PMO. Now does this PMO flash mob stuff, which is really good. She immediately put me in touch with Simon, and I think it might be a bit of attention seeker because you say, I'll do it. So, really delighted to keep this topic on the agenda. I was worried I was going to lose it, and I really appreciate Simon coming along to do it. So what I'll do is, I'll just hand you over to Simon for the next hour. I'll have a brief word with you before we go to the workshops, and I'll speak about that. But in the meantime,
thank you so much. Good morning. Good morning. How are you doing? Wasn't that last talk great? I think I'm going to change the whole of mine now because there's so many things in there that I thought were relevant. That thing there, there's a couple of other pages to it, and they say things like the first, well, below the button at the bottom is, have you got any questions? So chuck questions in if you want there, and I've got another page of it coming up in a second. And with a bit of luck, yes, there we go. So, yeah, as Eddie said, I'm second choice of the speaker, and they gave me the title and said, can you speak to that? And I thought, well, what's the relevance of the title and the content? You just talk about whatever you want to, really, don't you? You just put a title up there and then... But anyway, I'm going to do my best to follow that. So your stuff's going to come back up here, provided the technology works. The bit that you're just doing, it will refresh. But otherwise, hello, I'm Simon. I started in projects somewhere at the beginning of the 80s. Unfortunately we have a wire across the floor because this plug here is not working. So I...
okay, yeah?
Sorry?
Did you phone IT?
Somebody on my behalf. So yeah, I started in projects somewhere in the 80s in Stock Exchange in London, and I left there in the 90s, and I've been a freelance project management consultant ever since. I did try and sort out a bank over in Edinburgh, part of it a number of years ago, 20 years ago, and I'm still in Edinburgh. I haven't managed to get out yet. No, that's not fair. I've got a couple of kids. I've been doing project management for a long time, and over, I don't know, the last 20 years, I've combined that project management with both setting up program offices and training people in how to do stuff. And in the context of perhaps one of the things that we've heard from our speakers earlier in terms of systems, etc., and models, and do you believe the model or the system is there, or is it your projection? I put these letters up here because there's a model, and the thing I was going to say about this is all models are wrong. Some of them are sometimes useful, and if you don't recognise these letters, then that doesn't really matter. But this P here says perceiving, believe the world is full of patterns, and the N here says intuiting, again looking and believing the world is full of patterns, and the perceiving here says prefer to have options open rather than decisions made. And probably if we did the test, most of you folk here would be ESTJ, which would say you like decisions made and you believe stuff when you can feel it and kick it and touch it. So I'm actually probably coming at this from a slightly different perspective from you folk. And I have spent 20 years trying to get program or project or whatever they are, offices up and running and performing for the organisation and continuing to perform over time. And we just heard about entropy and the fact that entropy causes systems to decay. So one of the things that we might say in terms of the title here, one of the conclusions we might have in terms of the title here, is that the value of a successful project management office, or whatever it is, because I think you have to work out what we're actually talking about, is different every year from the preceding year and perhaps every month, and it's different from every perspective, from every viewer's view, through the eyes of every viewer. So, PMO, big in the middle there. Great. Thanks, Eddie, because that's thank you, Eddie. So I've turned it into XXO up here, because I don't think I know what one of these things is. I suspect that the overriding component here is actually we all have a different perspective. We scratch our heads, and our organisations scratch their heads. And when we have lack of clarity of what something's purpose is, then it's very difficult to judge whether or not it's giving you value. Value is relative to what you want out at the end. So I don't think we really know. I think we could have P for project, or P for program, or P for portfolio, and then you could have, and actually the most important one, is P for people, and I'll put an illustration for the second, and the X, is it management or support? So I think there's about 6 different combinations up there. And then, almost too big a topic to go and explore, is its role that of either agent or advisor. And I'm going to leave that one hanging, but if I start by saying that when people talk about PMO, there's an enormous amount of ambiguity in the conversation just at that point, because if we haven't worked out who the customer base is, if we haven't worked out what that customer base wants, then there is absolutely no way you can start targeting value. Let's just check. So Eddie said there's a PSO, or I'm not sure you can use those as initials, but who else is in something that has those sets of initials? Just 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 20. So 20% of the audience, perhaps. So let's try it the other way around. Who has some form of interface with a PMO? Like that. So, okay, that's more. I was in a conversation last week. Was it last week? Yes, it was last week, with some folk in an investment house who had a PMO, and I said, how do you find it? And the first person said, irritating. And the second person said, mostly irritating. And I thought to myself, that wasn't the conversation we wanted to pursue, but I thought to myself at that point, so you're the input side of this, you're the supplier, not the output side, the customer side of this. And that's one of the challenges I think that we have. Whatever we are in terms of the P up there, then what we really need to remember is that our role there is to support people. So if a P was changed from project, program or portfolio to people, and we stick with the S for support, then perhaps our job would be somewhat easier to sell. But we do need to sell it, I suggest, and I'll get to that as we get towards the end. So there are as many different flavours of whatever those 3 letters stand for as there are observers looking at what's going on. I don't know if you can read those, but there's some quite wonderful descriptions to those ice creams down here, starting with dark indulgent, which I can read there. Can anybody read any of the others from a slightly better perspective than I've got? Little red Washington. How does that communicate to you a flavour? I mean, at least dark indulgence and brown says to me it's chocolate. This, apparently, is the order in which local councils got formed in Australia. Let me just do that again. So, that's where administrative organisations sprung up in Australia. And when it got to this point, they somehow said, gosh, we'll split it up in some fashion and we'll form some states. And at that point over here, we got a state capital, and these lot turned into, sorry, we got a national capital, and that lot turned into state capitals. Now, one of the things I think, and it comes out of the theme that we just heard, entropy and the need for change, one of the themes that we need in how do you get good value out of a PMO is you need to understand, is your organisation at that stage or that stage? Are you at the beginning of the journey, or are you partway down through the journey? Have you got one office that covers the whole enterprise and then local offices that cover the needs at an individual project or programme level? If we put the rest in, so there were some fairly adventurous folk, weren't there? I've got into the middle earlier on there. It's a long walk from anywhere else, isn't it? You're certainly not going to go for a quick trip to the seaside from there. So the first thing that we need to consider in answering this question, what's the value of a PMO, is where is it in the organisation's life cycle, in your own, in the PMO's life cycle, in the needs of the customer base, and that's also going to be relevant to who is the customer base. Because I think the three pictures that were embedded in the last animation up here suggest to us that we could have a management office, and this is in control, imposing control, and so typically it's external, which is a quick way to piss people off. You know, like put something over the top of them that's controlling them. So, and typically that management control point is mandating things to people, which is another quick way to get people upset. So if you're in a PMO where the end is management, then most of the people, the majority of people that you deal with, the relationship is because I said so. And that's not one that most people find particularly rewarding. And that might be the sort of situation that we have with any of the dots that's on the bottom picture. And we might put something in the organisation that reflects the top of the picture, which is something at the top of the organisation. So I better build that bit of the picture out for you. So one of our choices might be to say, at the top of our organisation, it exists for some purpose. Either it's providing social good, or it's making profit for shareholders. And every organisation, whether it's a business or not, has business-like processes and behaviours that it has to support. And one of them is we have a finite amount of resource. I would guess all of us are feeling that the pressure on that finite amount of resource. And what the folk at the top table should be doing is they should be understanding how to allocate that resource and split it between the change-based initiatives that are just irresistible, unnegotiable, and the operational initiatives, which is the reason why we're there and the reason that we get our funding or we make our profits. And you could support that thing at some sort of top level. So there's my yellow star over there, perhaps being some sort of support or management in at that top level. So actually, PMO, because that was the title of the talk, but I'm going to suggest a better name for it would be PFSO, as in Portfolio Support, in which case maybe it's a Program Management Office. It could have either label, depending on whether you're looking at it sideways or above. You know. If I'm in the portfolio, this is supporting me. If I'm down in the programs, then this is managing me perhaps. So look, here's another PMO here. Maybe that's one of these dots out here. In which case, is that Program Management Office coming at Program Board, or is it coming in and helping the Program Manager at the program level? In which case now, is it Program Support Office, or is it Oversight of the Project Managers? So now it's a Project Management Office. And I don't think until we put the additional letter in there and we think about the S or the M that we're being clear enough in our naming to actually understand who it is that is enfranchised and who's disenfranchised or who's just because I say so. So the title gives us, I think, a challenge. How do you get value out of a successful PMO? Well, you have to know what your PMO is. You have to know what the P stands for. You have to know whether N is the right letter, and then you have to understand what value means. And value is like beauty in the eye of the beholder. It will be different for different people at different times. Or we could just say, all of this lot is a system of systems, and that would reflect exactly back into what we've just been hearing about. And not only is it a system of systems, this system of systems is the regulator for a whole bunch of other systems, the projects and programs, whose purpose is to change the system that they are a component of, which is our organisations. So at this point I feel overwhelmed by the title. I think I might need to sit down. Have you got any thoughts?
Have you got any technical leads?
Have I got any?
Why have you got only technical leads? What about the rest of your organization?
Well, just because I thought that picture was getting complicated enough, and I completely agree with you. Actually, the technical leads are only a short-term element of any change, aren't they? Because it's the leads of the organisation, it's the operational folk in supervisory and management and directing levels who are the real stakeholders here. So because I was focusing on PMO, and PMO is the change dimension, that's why it's got the technical leads in there. But yeah, I completely agree. It should be everybody. And then could I have? Yeah, I probably could have fitted it on the diagram. And you're definitely right to say I should have done. Any other thoughts? So, PMO customers, it depends on what the P stands for, it depends on whether the M is correct, and actually it just depends on the individual. So I'd say, there you go, there's a successful PMO. What's my analogy? What am I trying to illustrate here by saying that's a successful PMO?
Changing to match the environment.
Okay, yeah, changing to match the environment. You've got to be a chameleon to survive, I'm going to suggest. Well, I'm not sure that one blends in terribly well, does it? It's bright enough to stand out. But I think that if we're going to answer this question, what does value look like in the context of success, then, and we're going to do a good fist of achieving that, then actually we need to be a bit of a chameleon. We need to be recognising that different stakeholder communities have different needs. And we either need to say to our organisation, this is a conversation I've had with boards a few times. I've been asked to set up PMOs a few times. Well, you can come and be the project manager's best friend while you tell us what's going on. And I go, well, pick one out of two. Because if I'm the project manager's best friend, I'm their doctor or their lawyer. I'm going to go and have conversations with them about embarrassing topics that they are only going to share with me because I have promised never to share it anywhere else. Or I'm your eyes and ears, in which case whenever I go and see them, they're going to go, yeah, what can I do for you? But being both is extremely difficult. And as an organisation commissioning the formation of an XXO, you need to think, where do you expect these people's loyalties to be? Because I took a program office over, and the first, and IBM was a major supplier, and the first question the on-site IBM lead program director said to me is, what do you expect me to do with my risk register? And I said, why do you ask? He said, well, because your predecessor insisted that I shared it with her all the time. And I said, I expect you to manage all of your risks. I don't want to see your risk register. If I get hit by one of your risks that you haven't shared with me, then we'll be having words. But I expect you to keep your dirty laundry and wash your dirty laundry behind closed doors. But I do expect you to be on the top of your game. So it is about, I think, being a service provider. And that service needs to be tuned to your customers. Now, if you use that little app and you go to the next page of it, you could, and I'll put that up much bigger in a minute. I mean, that's clearly too small to see at the moment. But what sort of services would you like in your PMO? Because I think that picture over there says it all for me. What can you tell me about that picture up there, that set of words? What word would you use to describe that set of words? You need a mirror. That's a sentence, but thank you very much. What word would you use then? It's backwards. Now, why would I put that up there and say most project offices get this backwards? Maybe it's a thing the project should be doing, but then that would depend on what your environment is. It's a tail wagging the dog, but you'll have to decode that for me. What does that mean? Yeah. The project or program office very often says, here's the set of services we're going to offer. Well, isn't it sensible to go out and ask your customer base, as I'm trying to get you folks to do up here? And so if you put your name in, you just need to move on a slide. If you go back to it, it will say, the presenter has changed the slide. At least I hope it will. And you can put some, yeah, there we go, somebody's at least found it. I think the thing to do, if you want to be deriving value from a successful PMO, you need to go out to your customer base and say, what do you want? And how much are you prepared to pay for it? And then you have to decide how much it's going to cost to provide that service. Because every PMO has a cost, at least in terms of FTEs. And if it has a cost, it's probably called a cost centre. And if it's called a cost centre, there's an enormous amount of psychology that comes into how the organisation then looks at it. Words like efficiency bubble to the top of the assessment of value. And efficiency is a really dumb word to be using in any project context, which are about navigating forwards through the unknown. We need to be effective and adaptive there, and that's incompatible, largely incompatible, with things like efficiency. You still chucking stuff into that? Not changing much at the moment. I thought, I need that set of words, it's a bit opaque. And actually there's more to talk about in a project management office than just that. So I need to find a model out there that I can explain. And I thought, got this one, I thought, yeah, that's great. And I went, oh, bother. Too French. Damn. Anybody read French? Yeah, yeah. Good. What's it? No, don't. But I really thought this bit down here was useful. And I thought I'd better find another one. So I went and got, oh, damn. Why did it do that? Well, that's interesting. It's skipping more slides than it should. There we go. So I then went and got, no. Don't you just love technology? There we go. That's the bit that I wanted. That's the bit that I wanted. Yeah. Oh. So, that was a shame. So that screwed itself up 5 different ways around, didn't it? You've got to get that out of the way then. There we go, much better. Have you noticed that in projects, the stuff that you sit and plan, how it's all going to work, then when you come to execute it, it doesn't work like that. So actually what we need is that adaptability, that flexibility, and the ability to not panic. So here's a much better analogy, and I always think that people could grasp analogies that are rooted in food. So here we go, homemade pizza. So this is our project where our project manager is without the benefit of support from any sort of XXO, no PSO or whatever. So they're going to make pizza and they need a table and some cutlery and an oven and the cheese, etc. So they probably need other infrastructure like a fridge, and they need to have done tasks like go out shopping, etc. So we could say, that's awfully inefficient, you know. Why don't we just head off down to Morrison's or Asda or Waitrose or whatever, and at the back they have this section where they will make you up a pizza and you take it home and cook it yourself. So now there's a whole bunch of things you don't need to be responsible for because you outsource them. And that might be a nice step down the road in terms of adding some efficiencies while still being able to be flexible. Because they've got a lot more toppings that are relevant to their overall customer base. So when I turn up, instead of saying over here what we've got in our fridge, which is like one sort of cheese, and if we're really lucky, then maybe there's some chicken left over. Over here, there's lots of toppings. So actually, by aggregating things, I did manage to introduce some degree of efficiency for the organisation and flexibility for the projects. And it's that observation, I think, that drives organisations to say, these things are a good idea if you can get it right. After that, it goes to the cliff. You might go the extra step and just get the phone number out or the app or whatever and do the Let's Eat or whatever it's called, and then almost nothing's down to you. Does it say table up the top there? Obviously they haven't heard of people sitting on the sofa in front of the telly there and stuff on their lap, because we could have got rid of that one. And then the final one is the full suite of services provided for you, which I guess we have to say has probably the most cost because there's a profit margin in there for somebody else. But those, I think, thank you for whoever's still adding up here, those I think are a different dimension on the model that sits behind the answer to this question, what does value look like from a successful PMO? Because if your organisation looks like lots of projects like this, then being right over here is a long leap. But you could perhaps evolve there, and if your picture looked like Australia did when there weren't very many councils, then probably your best way of achieving success is to do your own thing locally. But at some point, there is enough do your own thing locally going on that it makes sense to group and collaborate, in which case you get higher orders of structure now. So we're back to the self-referential or the what's the word I'm looking for? The fractal type approach. That wasn't the word I was looking So we really need a set of services that relate to what the customer really wants. And I just turned that lot round so that you can read them. But I put the most important one in the middle with it underlined, which is to say projects are delivered by people, not by process. 100% process, no people, no delivery. 100% people, no process, you probably do still get delivery. Some process plus people probably starts to maximise delivery, but as process increases, and process tends to sort of atrophy or maintain the organisation locked in a physique while the world around us is changing. So the next component of how do you get value out of a successful PMO is that successful PMO is back to the chameleon, but now I need a different analogy. It needs to evolve alongside the organisation. What form of pizza sustainment do we want? And where are we on that journey? So what did you folks put in? If you couldn't make that work, just shout stuff out. With a bit of luck, it will come up with some things. So we've got stakeholder communication up there, accounting, status tracking, access, forecasting, risk, maturity assessment, coffee! I don't know who put that one in, but it is my theory that all projects run on brown liquid. It depends where you are in the world as to which particular sort of brown liquid it is. Now, some places it's tea, and other places it's beer. I suppose you might have to put clear liquid in as well occasionally. Russia seems to run on vodka. Removing blockers, yeah, that's another good one. The PMO there to facilitate other people to be successful. Workshop facilitation, advice, yeah, that's growing, isn't it, in terms of significance. Joined up thinking. So, actually, this is what you need. To be a successful PMO, what you do is you stick in the back of the lift, or the stairwell, or the car park, all over the organisation, a thing like that, up the top that says, tell us what you want. And then you monitor it on a routine basis, or you do it by whatever other mechanisms. But one of my favourites is to stick something in the back of the lift. Because everybody walks into a lift, don't they? And which button do I need? And then there's 3 other people in there, and they stand there and like this. Well, there's 15 or 20 seconds, there, or maybe 40 seconds there, where they're not communicating. They're not, I don't know where I put my phone, let's pretend this is my phone. They're not like this, are they? I mean, some of them are, but hey, if you could capture people for 15 seconds to get their input 5 times a day in today's world, wouldn't that be useful? So stick that in the back of the lift and say, what services do you want? And then monitor it routinely. Because, well, whatever other mechanism, maybe you give them a packet of post-it notes or something in a wall, and there's a system for eliciting creative thinking. I'm going to say to you the bottom line is that PMO is successful when people feel safe, served and satisfied. By the way, how am I doing on time? Where's Eddie? What's the time? 10:30. Right, 25 minutes. Including time for you. So the question is, what does success look like? And the first thing I think that we have to do then is ask who are our stakeholders. So here's my stakeholder group. Here we've got those folk with their heads in the clouds, otherwise called the senior leadership team. Ranging between not really too switched on or concerned to angry, or maybe confused, I don't know. Here's my project sponsor, perfectly juggling golden balls. Gosh, I wish I'd ever had a sponsor like that. Here's my project manager, dealing with the hot potatoes and dropping a few. I mean, that's what happens in projects, isn't it? When you look to a project support office, what you want to say is, I'm a project manager, therefore I'm not perfect, and I've got a home life. So I need you folks to catch the balls when I drop them or pick them up for me. And let's do that as quietly as we can, so that not too many people are there pointing a finger at me. Here's my user community, here's my suppliers, and if we're project managers, we do know that suppliers drop all of the balls at some point, and then you have to come along and pick them up for them. This was supposed to be configuration management, because that's a pretty alien group of folk, isn't it? What do they do? And here's my team leader or my technical lead or whatever. We only give them one ball to play with at a time. But they're very adept at it. And now we have to say, so what's your success criteria from my PMO? And actually the answer is we've got different ones. So if you want to be a successful PMO, that is, you understand the target for value. We haven't yet got to the point of how you measure it. But you understand the target, you're going to find that this matrix has different things in different columns. And quite probably, some of the things that are appreciated here, the positives, are negatives when we get over here. Negatives when we're here. So as project manager, so I played the game from both sides, poacher and gamekeeper, so project manager and TSO or PMO support. And when I'm project office, I always remember that project manager, the one thing I really want is freedom by default. I'll come to you when I need help. Could you just stay out of the way the rest of the time? And tell me what the corporate rules are, but if I cross over them, I'm going to be an instant, but otherwise can you just stay out of my way? Oh, and by the way, could you do this, and this for me? And can you make sure that that costs me less in budget and FTE terms than if I resourced it fully myself? Because now I can say, yeah, I'm using the corporate service over here, and that's saving us this many FTEs or providing this degree of efficiency, and that at least gives me something to say in a steering committee when otherwise all is looking cloudy and doom-laden, and I can say, look how good I'm being in terms of corporate citizen. I'm putting a slightly jocular air on it, but I think if you haven't done this, you just can't get near the title that we started with. And then we have to understand what we mean by value, because that was in the title as well. So value, and I've changed it to satisfaction, because I think that you have to appeal to people on an emotional level to get true engagement. You do the spreadsheets and the stuff afterwards to justify what is actually visceral to people. But benefit minus cost. And I said to you earlier, most XXOs are a cost centre in the organisation, which immediately puts all of the people in the organisation who have an operational perspective into the mindset of efficiency, which immediately puts you as a PMO in a position where, oh well, I'm screwed already. It's just a slow death now. You know, there's a few laughs, so some of you might commiserate with that, have experienced it. So I actually have to be saying to my stakeholder community, what would your satisfaction? I have been challenged in a couple of large organisations by senior folks saying, oh, you run a PMO? Yeah. So why do we spend so much time and effort and money on you folk? To which my response has always been to say, are you aware of what you're personally, not as an officer of the company, but personally liable for under legislation about governance and industry and health and safety and all those other things? And sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they say no. And I say, well, go home this evening, think about whether there's anything that I do that protects you, or anything I could do that would protect you more. And if the answer to both of those questions tomorrow morning is no, then fire me. I did once have that conversation with somebody from PwC who said, actually, I've had a thought about that, and we could replace you with one of our consultants. Which was actually fine by me because I paid out the rest of my contract. What we're looking for is this little comment down the bottom here, which is return on capital employment, capital employed, but I'll put it up here. If you are measuring things like time to market, the role and the result of the PMO is to increase time to market for the organisation, then you're satisfying the shareholder or you're satisfying the taxpayer because you're delivering return on capital. You're influencing the organisation in the direction of better services. And capital, I particularly mean in terms of will, skill and culture of the people. Yeah, the plant machinery and that sort of stuff is necessary as well. But I said earlier that, that the successful PMO was making people feel safe and satisfied. So defining value is when we get benefit as a surplus over cost. And what we should be measuring as value is going to be dependent on who our stakeholders are. And stakeholders, I think, are perhaps important, particularly if what we are is the project, is the portfolio support end of things. It's things like time to market. But it might also be stuff like reduced stress, and it might be the age-old triangle that we get in lots of textbooks about cost, time and performance. You might see that as cost time scope or cost time quality. Since there's an ongoing argument about whether it should be quality or scope there, I put P for both. And I've said it a couple of times now, if you're a cost centre, then if you're being measured on efficiency of the operation of the PMO, then it's the wrong thing that's being measured. I don't really have the time to go exhaustively through that, but you should be being measured on the outputs of the organisation and how you affect those, because you're the feedback loop in the whole process. So if the organisation's purpose is to give soup to homeless people, the question ought to be, how many bowls of soup did we dispense without PMO, and how many bowls of soup are we now dispensing with a PMO? Because now we're asking the question about, is it giving support to our end purpose as an organisation? We shouldn't be asking, how many progress reports did it put out, and were any of them late? You know, admin functions are much cheaper to build with spreadsheets and people who don't cost as much as probably somebody who's thinking about how the PMO works should be paid.
Projects are about change. So
absolutely.
Operations.
Yeah.
More efficient, more effective, more output.
Yeah, you're quite right. My example was simplistic. I thought an operational measure, I'm not quite sure where I'm addressing, but I thought an operational measure was easy to get your head around, but imagine that I'm a soup kitchen and I've determined that the calorific value of the soup that we're delivering is not as great as is necessary during the winter, where people are stressed on the streets by colder environment, and therefore I've got a program in place which is increase the nutritional value. But I am completely with you in terms of that clarification. If we're genuinely an S, as in support, then maybe it is about saving admin. This project of 10 people or 1,000 people would have used this much energy to do its administration, and because we've centralised it, we've reduced the FTEs to support it. If I'm up at the other end of portfolio support, then I would hope that what we're actually seeing there is an understanding of strategic outcomes, and we're building a partnership that enhances either taxpayer or other returns on capital employed, where particularly capital is our workforce. So PMO is a service provider. We need to think what to measure, and what to measure is going to be specific to the different stakeholder communities. So up here, they want to be auditable. They want to be able. Did you see those fire officers in front of the inquiry over the last few days, being asked questions? Been in the role for a career period of time. I just happen to be in the building, in the fire station that covers the footprint, and now my training record is being examined to say, so you never had any training on how to do, not that I can recall. But lots of other people probably sat there thinking they're up for the grace. So actually up at this level, they spent a long time climbing up a greasy pole. They want to get to the end of their pension entitlements. So typically what they want is to be safe and auditable. And then probably some stuff over here about I can represent to my community of either taxpayers for social endeavours or shareholders for profit. But that's the stuff that's first in the thinking. So that probably is pretty similar for the sponsor, but now it's become personal rather than corporate. But then they want local optimisation. And we're going down the route of systems thinking. One of the things we know about systems and organisations is that if you optimise them locally, you screw them up in global terms. Local optimisations tend to depress the capability of the organisation in total. So sponsors typically have a bonus attached to reaching some objective. So if I'm a project support office, I'm more than happy to do everything this person wants for local optimisation. If I'm a portfolio office, then I'm saying, hey, let's stand back and think about what's for the greater good here. So that's an important consideration as a PMO, PXO, to think, who's my community and who am I reporting to? Project manager, I've already said, freedom by default, guidance on request, and I'd like all that dull data stuff like timesheet reporting and the like handled for me so I don't have to get involved. But I don't want any of this stuff like you've got to fill a timesheet in by a specific deadline. Because that's getting in the way of me doing all the stuff I'd really like to be doing. So I'd like you to make all the dull stuff disappear by magic. The user community probably wants access to information. That's a bit global. I was running out of space on the slide. They want facilitation. Hey, we're about to be overrun by a project. I'm not quite sure what that means. Sounds painful. Don't think I want to be involved. Can you help me? Can you explain? So they want some sort of support that makes their anxiety go away. Our suppliers want, look, I'm going to do everything I can to meet the terms of the contract if you can pay me on time. So there's all sorts of links there into the quality systems in order that we can prove that the work that's being done is appropriate, and then they want swift payment. Now maybe that just entirely lives within the finance function. In which case you now say, what's the relationship between the finance function and the PSO, PMO, whatever you call it? And now we're still saying, there's an overlap there. So we're coming up in a couple of slides' time. We're going to need to go and talk to them to understand where the boundaries are in these processes. And the team down here, well, they want the skill sets like, can you show us how to do risk management in a way that is less painful for us and more useful? Can you do things like run workshops? But really, can you take the admin off us without any extra overhead? Can you just get rid of it for us? So that we can go away and be creative and the like. That's what 3 minutes past. I thought for a minute you said 13. I was thinking, oh, I was going to have to talk fairly quickly for the last 5 slides. 3 minutes past. So I think I'm almost in a position now to start answering this question about value. Although I still think that question about value is probably too complicated or complex to be able to answer properly. Somewhere deep in the organisation is stuff, people doing stuff, and that generates numbers. Numbers, I think, we can put into tables and graphs, and that means we can extract out trends and traffic lights, and that means we can do some forecasts, and all the way along that chain, but particularly at the end, we've got decisions. And I think that the PMO sits somewhere in that chain. We don't generate the numbers, they come from the folk that we're the control mechanism, but perhaps we do the bits through here, and now we have to ask, are we the trusted partner at the top of the organisation? That is to say, are we part of decision making, or are we simply feeding data to the decision makers? So I think it's reasonably clear to me that our input boundary is here. I'm less clear about where our output boundary is down the page here. But what I would say is I just nick this, you get onto Google and you say, show me some good stuff to put in the presentation, and then you go, yeah, I quite like that one and that one. But there's a hierarchy out there called the DICWA, data, information, knowledge and wisdom. And I just wanted to say that they're all interrelated. And the real challenge for us as we get higher up the organisation and further across this page over here is, so I just stole this as well. Anybody recognise that? Put a name to it? So I've got 4 quadrants, I've slightly renamed them, but I've got 4 quadrants and they've got strategic and tactical in them, and they're about measuring. It is exactly about the scorecard. Gone through about 4 iterations. If you're a program office, or then you really ought to be thinking, what does my balanced scorecard look like for the organisation, and then how do I fit into it? So here's the customer. Normally you have finance at the top there, but I'm sure that's incorrect. So here's the customer, and our interactions with them generate some numbers that we can turn into stuff that we use about allocation of resources. How do we distribute our resources between operational and change-based stuff, and then that feeds into learning and growth, which feeds into the procedures that we use to service the customer. If you get procedures wrong, you don't have so many customers, which means you don't have so many resources, which means, etc. And if you get it right, you get into the virtuous circle. So actually it's this little bit at the bottom of the page here that I think, as a PMO, I have to think about, and then I have to go and ask my community, where do I end over here? Am I the decision maker? Are you the decision maker? If you're the decision maker, what format do you want the data in and when? Because we need to fit it into these 2 pictures. And if CFO, finance director, chief exec, or however high up the organisation my influence reaches, you don't know what that picture looks like, then actually there's the first thing I have to do. I have to draw this picture for you and educate you if I'm a support office at your level. If I'm a management office for the level below, I'm just saying, look, I'll gather all this stuff and I'll show it out. in which case we're in one of our Australia pictures, probably the middle one, and our life in that vein, providing that service catalogue, probably has an 18-month life expectancy. And if you're still doing that 18 months later, and obviously 18 months is a number picked in the air, but it's a pretty common turning point, watershed. If you're still doing exactly that 18 months later, then somebody's going to say, I don't think these folk are doing what we need, and you're 18 months away from being closed down. But if at the 18-month level you're going, where should we be in 18 months? Where should we be today? Are we still where we were 18 months ago? So measuring value is the journey. We're still on a journey. And my eagle over there is supposed to say there's something at the top of the food chain. So if I'm a portfolio support office, then questions that we should be supporting are things like what percentage of projects are delivering the benefits that were projected at the point the project was sanctioned. Now, in order to be able to do that, your organisation needs to be healthy and competent from the bottom to the top in terms of its capability. If you measure that one and you see that strategic objective improving, you have an enormous amount of, I almost use exactly the same iceberg picture that you had. It would be nice to have the link. But if you've got that one at the top there, in your things you should report, and you're seeing that trending in the right direction, then there's thousands of things that you're getting right on below you. If you're just a single project temporary support office, this project has enough stress that we're going to put a PSO in place and we'll take it apart when the project is over, then you should be measuring things like how many hours of work that would have been spent by the development team and now actually being spent on development, not admin. Because now you're showing leverage. Because you're saying, look, I've taken this, whatever pounds per hour person, and taken this many hours of work out of their hands and put it into this person, this pounds per hour. So look how many more pounds per hour's worth of high value stuff you're getting than you would have got. So there's where my budget justification comes from in that context. Of course, that's the top and the bottom of the spectrum. Program management office, then you probably should be asking questions like, what's the change I've made in terms of the organisation's ability to get to first benefit, last benefit? So how quickly did we get to the point where this programme is able to show that we're delivering business benefit? And how long did it get to the point where the programme said that's all the benefit enabling done? We might do things like benefit growth rate. We definitely need to talk about benefit to the organisation versus cost of acquisition and cost of ownership. Sometimes abbreviated as TCO, the total cost of ownership type consideration. But clearly that's a very, very short thumbnail sketch of the sorts of metrics that we might be using. Now the challenge and the commission that I was given was to say, so how do you do all this stuff? And I don't think we could start down the road, how do you do it, until we've covered what we've covered. And I also don't think I can answer the question about how you do it, because it's dependent on all those variables. Where are you in the life cycle? What does your organisation look like? Who are you commissioned to support? So first thing I'm going to say is if you're focused on numbers, then that's the hygiene factors. Does anybody know what I mean by hygiene factors? It's the stuff that if you don't do it, you get shot. But when you do it, it doesn't make anybody happy. It's just like, that's what it's required to get on the playing field. After that, you actually have to do this. You have to get your eyes and your ears out there and talk to people. Because value depends on the perceived benefit. There's nothing numeric about perceived benefits. It's about how do people feel. And when you understand how to give people a good feeling, because you've been talking to people, because you've been out there, then you have the mechanisms by which you can tune your value proposition. If you go the other way around, and I had all those PMO services up there backwards, if you're doing things backwards, then you might be in this place. Enforcing rules whose value is to somebody else, but you're enforcing them on somebody who can't see the value. So what you now have to do is say, I don't want to have to do this to you because it's going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt me, but it's going to hurt you. But the reason I'm doing it is these people over here feel very passionate about it. If we can link those people feel passionate about it to your performance, then I can tell them what a wonderful job you're doing, and then they will smile at you, and that will at least be some recompense. So, enforcing rules whose value is hidden, or indeed actually sometimes PMOs just get carried away with themselves and they just do stuff that's like, hey, you've got to be consistent. Why? Well, we're a PMO. Yeah, and, well, we're about enforcing standards. Because we're a PMO. Okay, you just lost connection with all your stakeholders at that point. So if you're adding cost or grief to people without visible connection to benefit. If you just disenfranchise people. So I quite like that picture, and it was Creative Commons, so I stole it. But if you're not seen to be listening and responding, then people will talk about you and behind your backs in negative ways, and no smoke without fire, etc. Or I need an excuse for that picture, really. So, the classic, you can actually just be ineffective. You don't have the relationships, you don't have the processes, you don't have things organised. So, how do you draw? So, last couple of slides. How do you draw and provide services? If you're the requester, go and ask people in the PMO to provide the service you want. If you're overseen by a PMO, go and talk to them and say, this is the expertise I need from you. Why are these things mandatory? This stuff, when you do it, really pisses me off. This is the standard wrong down here. You go and ask, how's this for you? Because when you do it to me, this is how I do it. So go and give them feedback. If you're on the other end of the spectrum, then go and explain to people why the things you're doing that are mandatory you're doing. And ask them what they want. And you have to sell the services. If you're a PMO, don't expect everyone's going to come to you because somehow there's an edict. Go out and talk to people and say, look, this is what we're doing, and why we're doing it, who's getting value from it, and I'm sorry that it impacts you, or I'm really glad that it's given you, wherever it's gone, it's given you a benefit. And you might put things like templates together, but that's not the place to focus. My last thought really is this one from Drucker. How do you gauge the value of a successful PMO? You will only be successful if you address the culture. Having a strategy is no good in isolation of culture, because as Drucker said, you're not on the playing field. This book was written in 1942, that one over there was written in 2002. He's been thinking about this stuff for a long time. So, that was me. Sorry for overrunning.